Hello students, welcome to class 2 of KMUS Spirit class. If you remember, my name is Ashton and I'm your teacher for the semester. This lesson will be a little bit longer, a lot longer than the first video. This one will be 45 minutes, so yeah. Okay, if you're watching this video, our first assignment I think is due already, the self-introduction. Make sure you don't miss assignments. I'm going to be really strict with the late assignments. I'm just not going to accept anything this late. In the last semester, I was really nice about accepting late assignments, but I found that caused a lot of trouble, and there were so many people who were late all the time, so I'd rather just be strict about it. The one good thing for me as a teacher that it does is it lets me see which students are the ones who really care about the class. So I think if you're late one time, it doesn't mean you don't care about the class, but if you're late like a bunch of times and you miss a bunch of assignments, then I know that you don't really care about the class, so I can give you the grade that you deserve. But the people that are never late and always turn in everything and do their best, I want to reward them by giving them a good grade, and I want to see easily who those students are. Okay. Again, use the subtitle function in the video if you don't know what I'm saying, if it's tough, right? Again, it's going to be in the lower right section of the video. The default option for subtitle will be English, but if you go into the advanced options, you can choose Korean. I checked it out, and it's not very good. There's going to be a lot of mistakes with the Korean subtitles, but if you really have no idea what I'm saying, then use the Korean one, and then maybe watch it first with the English one and then try again with the Korean. But you don't want to waste your time, so I want you to understand what's going on. So try both. Try Korean and try English as well. Okay, this is my first time teaching this class. I'm not exactly sure how it's going to progress. Again, I want to remind you guys. So, let me talk about the assignment. I've listened to several people give their introductions. It's been a lot of fun listening to those. Like I told you in the first video, that's one of my favorite things about being a teacher, is getting to know new students. I think it's really cool that you guys are taking this challenge, which is the International School of Business, and it's all in English. I think that's so awesome, and it's such a challenge that you guys are taking, so that's really cool. I'm sure by the time you graduate, your English skills will be so much better than now, so I think that's really great that you guys are doing that. What do I want to say? Oh, okay, so I mentioned this before. Usually this class is not taught by a foreign professor, and it's not taught in English. It's almost always taught by a Korean professor. It has a lot of Korean history and stuff like that I don't know about. So most foreign teachers are not really qualified to teach this class, but because you guys are taking all of your classes in English, this one should be in English too. So like, it's a special case that they have the foreign teacher teach this class. So I think I'll talk about it more in the other slide, but it's a challenge for me. But I'm gonna do my best, okay? The last thing is, because I haven't taught this class before, I'm really not sure about the pacing of the class, meaning like how much material can I cover in one class? Do I have enough stuff to teach you guys, or am I missing stuff? So if I'm having trouble filling up the time, basically of 45 minutes, I'm also going to add a cultural lesson at the end of each video. And those will just be American culture lessons, which, I hope are not boring for you, but maybe somebody will find them interesting. But yeah. Okay, so what's the format of the class? Our book has 8 units. Okay. Um, so we have 16 weeks officially in the semester, but there's midterm and final week, so it's about 14 total weeks of lessons. So I thought we're gonna do about each week. For each unit will be covered in 2 weeks. So some of the units have a lot of information and some don't have a lot of information. So it's gonna be kind of a challenge to see uh, if that fits. But we'll see. Like this first unit has so much information. I could probably do 3 weeks on the first one, but there are other chapters that are a little bit short and don't have a lot of information, and those could be done more quickly. So, like I said, I'm just not sure, but we'll see as the semester goes on. Every week there's going to be one assignment. The assignments will be focused on improving your English skills in some way. So it's going to be either like you do a presentation, or you write about a topic, or you record your voice talking about a topic, or you might read something from the book, something like that. But they're all going to be aimed at improving your English in some way. Okay, so the format of the video will usually be, I'm going to give an announcement, a reminder at the beginning. Then I'm going to do a lecture from the book, and then I'll introduce whatever the assignment is for the week, and then I'll give directions on the assignment, and then again, with extra time, I might give a cultural lesson if there's extra time left over. Okay, before we start, just want to let you know I'm gonna try to make these lectures interesting, but I don't know if it's possible. Like some of the topics here are just gonna kind of be boring, and I don't know how to not make it boring. So I apologize if it's not interesting, but it is what it is. It's the history of KMUS University, so some people might find it interesting. I've had a lot of fun reading the book, because a lot of it's new to me. It's a lot of Korean history and the history of uh, Western influence in Korea. It's stuff that I never knew, so I'm having a lot of fun reading the book. Also, number two, the book is missing a lot of details about history that I think are important to kind of understand the overall picture of what was going on at the time. So I had to spend a lot of time outside of the book, reading other sources. Like I read an extra short book about the history of Christianity in Korea, uh, especially what was going on during the Japanese occupation, because there wasn't a lot of information on that, and that was a long period, right? 1910 to 1945. So that's something I didn't know a lot about. So I apologize in advance if I make mistakes about history. I'm not my major was not history, and I'm not an expert on history, and I'm getting some of my information from the internet, so I might make mistakes. So please understand if I get something wrong. If I do, you could let me know, but I'm sorry that if I make some mistakes. Okay, For this week, you don't need the book to do the lesson, but in the future, you're probably going to need the book, okay? So make sure you get the English version. I'm going to have some kind of assignments where I might have you read directly from the book, so you will need the English one, not the Korean one. So let me know if you have trouble finding that book. So again, just as a reminder, this is the book. There's a foreword at the beginning of the book. It's kind of an introduction. Um, it's mostly just talking about how you should learn how to be a KMUS person, meaning that you care about other people, you're a scholar, you want to improve your knowledge. That's like a KMUS person. And then it lets us know that KMUS, the Hancha from KMUS, K means open and Myung means light. So that's why the book is called Opening the Light. So I didn't know that. Did you? That was pretty cool to learn that. Opening the Light is KMUS. Okay, so Unit 1. This chapter is all about the history of KMUS. It goes from the the late 1800s until the end of the unit. Goes up till now, actually. It's like the whole history of KMUS. In the next week, I'm going to get into the more recent stuff, but this week is only about the beginnings, okay? So the founding in the beginnings of KMUS University came as Korea was starting to open up to the rest of the world. During the 1800s, many Asian nations began trading technology with Western nations, but Korea was against this. At this time, Korea was known by many as the hermit nation because it did not engage in trade agreements with other countries. You may or may not know this, but a hermit is like somebody who stays alone and away from other people. There's something called a hermit crab, which is a crab that stays in its shell. So that's what Korea was known as. We're going to see that while this was probably good for Korean culture, it caused Korea a lot of trouble because it didn't have enough technology. It was beaten in battles by Japan and China, so that caused a lot of trouble and weakened its power and eventually made it so Japan was able to take over Korea. So we'll see how this hermit nation was a pretty bad idea, this policy. Okay, so the history of Christianity in Korea. Since the start of the Joseon period, the official religion of Korea was Neo-Confucianism. Confucius is Gongja, and I tried to read about what exactly Neo-Confucianism is, but it was hard for me to understand exactly. I know like the basic ideas of Gongja, right? Confucius, and it's Confucius in English. We say Confucius. Basically, respect your father, love your friend and brother, and your children should respect you. And it's this like hierarchy of respect and duty, and knowing the truth and things like that. So that was the religion of Joseon, right? As I read, and again I could be wrong, before this, Buddhism was a bit more popular, but Buddhism was kind of replaced by this idea of Confucianism. Oh my God. And yeah, that's what it is. If you're curious about it, please read more about it, because I had trouble. And let me know exactly what it was. I don't really understand it exactly. The first ideas of Christianity in Korea came from a translated text that was brought from China. So this, I believe, was in the late 1700s. Korea was closed off, but Japan had been trading with other countries, with like Portugal and in these other countries, China as well. Very early, China had Western um, explorers going there. So the Catholic religion was the first one that was in China. So I believe some Korean scholars traveled to China and they learned about these Catholic ideas, and they brought them back to Korea. And interestingly, most of even in at this time in the 1700s, uh, most of this Neo-Confucianism was still in Hanja. This is what I read. Again, I'm not an expert, but uh, you know, only the very educated people could read Hanja, but the Christian texts were translated into Hangul, so this made it a lot easier for the common people to read it and understand it. So, you know, the first Christians were kind of the low class in Korea, the people who were not the Yangban and who didn't know Hanja, and they were able to read this. Christianity was quite popular among these people because if you could imagine in that society, if you were not at the top, if you were not one of these Yangban, right, then your life was not very good. But Christianity was teaching them that you're equal in the eyes of God and that everybody will go to heaven if they believe in God. So I think that was probably a popular belief at the time among the lower class citizens in the Joseon Kingdom. Okay. Now, the first actual like missionaries. So, in case you don't know, a missionary is someone who is usually a Christian, right? And they travel to another country and they try to teach about God, and they establish churches and hospitals and things like that. So the first missionaries of the Christians traveled to the Middle East and eventually to South America. And being a missionary was kind of a dangerous job because you're going to such a faraway place, and sometimes the places that you're going to, they don't like Christians and they might kill you. So in the Joseon period, actually a lot of Christians were killed. Not necessarily the missionaries, but just the common people who had started learning the Catholic teachings. As I read, from the 1700s until the 1800s, the late 1800s in Korea, 10,000 Catholics and Christians were killed. Again, I have no idea if this is actually true. This is just as I was researching, I found this. It's an interesting history if you want to learn about it. I don't remember the exact guy's name, but around this time there was also another man, I forgot his name, who was leading kind of a uprising of the common people against the royal family, and he was killed. And he was not Christian, obviously, and he didn't like Christians, but from what I learned, they both had kind of a similar thinking a little bit, so the Christians kind of got caught up in what he was trying to do, so they also got punished for what he did. Okay, sorry that I'm not an expert about this. Okay. The main idea that we need to understand is that the late Joseon Kingdom was not a very safe or friendly place for Christians or missionaries, and going there was a real risk. But something changed in 1875, and we'll see what that was. In 1875, a Japanese ship attacked Kangwa Island. The Japanese ship and its weapons were a lot more advanced than what the Koreans had, so they were forced to sign a treaty with the Japanese. So at this time in 1875, I believe the Japanese had been trading with the West for a really long time, since the 1600s or late 1500s. They had developed much better weapons at this time than Korea. They had electricity, they had steamships, they had like high-powered rifles, and they were able to just completely destroy the Korean Navy in battle. So the Koreans were basically forced to give up and sign a treaty. This treaty was arguably the first step to Japan's eventual takeover of Korea. It also forced Korea to open its borders, and at this time it was much easier for foreigners to begin entering the country. So, and again, guys, I really apologize if I have any of this wrong, but this is what I read. Japan had forced Korea at this time to open up all its borders. So, because they were kind of taking control of Korea, as I read, that was just kind of what was going on. China had said that it wanted control as well, but then a little later, there was a Japanese-China war, and Japan won that war, and that was like the final step to finally take over Korea, because there was nobody to stand in their way anymore. Okay. But anyway, so after that treaty, it was a lot easier for the missionaries to start going there, and that's when a lot of them started to come, like many, many, many. So at this time, Western medicine and educational systems were introduced to Korea in many places, including Seoul, Pyongyang, Busan, and Daegu. Oops. Okay, so now let's talk specifically about Daegu and KMUS University. And now we're going to look at some of the important figures that helped establish basically Christianity in Korea and KMUS specifically. Okay, so the first guy that we're going to learn about is William M. Beard. The thing he's most famous for is that he's the founder of Sungshir University, which is in Seoul now. Really great school, right? But when it was first made, it was actually in Pyongyang. As I was reading again, not an expert, but as I was reading about Christianity in Korea, I heard that the people who lived in what is now North Korea really liked Christianity because this is what I read, they had less power than the people in the south, like places in Seoul and Daegu, so they really liked the equalness of Christianity. Okay, so he was American. He came from America. He did all of his study in America and became a PhD in theology, and he began his missionary service in Busan. He stayed there for a few years. Then he made just a brief trip to Daegu, and he got there and he was starting to convert people to Christianity, to teach the Christian teachings, and he had an idea to start a university there, but pretty quickly after arriving, he was asked to instead go to Seoul and become the director of education there. And then after that, he moved up to Pyongyang, and that's where he started Sungshir University. So what he did was, he asked his wife's brother to take over his duties in Daegu. So his wife's brother was a man named James Adams. Uh, you may know that our school has Adams College, right? And Adams Hall and all this stuff. So Adams is a really important figure in the history of KMUS. But, and again, our book is a little confusing with the names and stuff like that. But I'm pretty sure that James Adams was the father, and then we'll see later there's another Adams, Edward Adams, and he was the son, and he was the one that really started KMUS. And then there was even a grandson, another Adams, who was also did many things in Korea. So it was like 3 generations of these Adams who really did a lot for Korea, actually. Okay, so he was the brother-in-law of the guy we just learned about, William Baird. He studied Korean for 2 years in Busan before coming to Daegu to spread Christianity. There's another guy, friend of James, who was more of a doctor. And all of these guys were Christians, and they were very intense and devout Christians. I don't know if you know about Protestant Puritanism. Puritanism is a special form of Christianity that was practiced by especially Americans. It is very, how do I say, kind of intense Christianity, hardcore Christianity. Like, you don't drink, you don't smoke, you on Sunday you don't do anything, you don't do any work, you have to go to church. If you do anything bad, you're kicked out of the church. It's a very strict form of Christianity. So these guys were very serious about God and very serious about Christianity, and you were not going to catch these guys, smoking or drinking or doing anything crazy. They were just really hardcore Christians. Okay. So anyway, Woodbridge was more of a doctor, and he helped establish Western medicine in Daegu. Together they founded Daegu's Jaejungwan. Jaejungwan. Okay, the first Jaejungwan was founded in Seoul actually in 1885. So this was not the first Jaejungwan, the one in Daegu, but it was the Daegu one. Okay, so all of these first hospitals were called Jaejungwan. I want to show you here. I didn't know this as I was researching for the class. I found that there was a cool drama called Jaejungwan, and it's all about. This is about the one in Seoul, the first Western hospital in Korea. Pretty cool story, in case you didn't know. From what I heard, at the time there was the last Joseon, not the last Joseon, but almost the second to last Joseon king, and his wife, and I think the king or somebody related to the king was stabbed by knife, and they thought he was definitely going to die, but kind of the Western medicine helped him to recover. So the wife, the empress, was so impressed by this that she wanted to make a Western hospital in Korea so that the Korean people could learn how to do this great medicine. So I don't know if the drama's good, but I want to maybe check it out. Sounds like a cool story. I love like historical dramas, so maybe this is a good one. I don't know. If anybody's seen it, let me know. Give me a review. Let me know if it was good or not, because I do like dramas. Okay. So they also founded the Migook Yakbang, which was the first Western pharmacy in Daegu. So here's I get me. I don't know what this is. Probably a church. Maybe this is the Jejungwan. I'm not really sure, but it looks like somebody's getting some medical treatment. And then here's the Migu Gyapbang. As I was researching this, I thought it was a little interesting. Like what was Western medicine at this time? Because Western medicine was not really developed at that time. Was it really better than traditional medicine? And what I heard was by the late 1800s, Western medicine was not that amazing, but there were some things that it did pretty well. One was surgery. Uh, they had kind of gotten good at doing surgery. So if somebody had a problem, they could usually sew you up and not make you infected again. They were starting to learn about germ theory, so they knew that you had to wash your hands at this time. They also had pain medicine, anesthesia. So before that, if you broke your leg or something, then there wasn't much you could do. But Western doctors were probably able to they could fix a broken leg. If you had some surgery that needed to be done, like sewing up, they could give you some pain medicine and sew you up. So it was not amazing medicine, but compared to what they had at the time, which was pretty much nothing. I guess they only had some herbs and things like that. I guess it was a big step up. So again, not really amazing medicine, but probably better than what they had. Okay, let's keep going. All right, so this hospital, the Jejungwan, later developed into Keimyung University Medical Center in the far future, right? But it was the start of Keimyung's medical hospital and all that. Apart from the helping build the Jejungwan and the Migu Gyakbang, Adams also established Daenam Elementary School and Kaesong High School in 1906 and several other schools. He was very big proponent of education, and he wanted people to learn. And I guess these were probably the first maybe Western style schools in Daegu, probably. And they taught Christian values and I think even a little bit of English. Isn't that amazing? This was the first English teachers in Korea were here probably. Uh, and they were not like me. They were these Christian missionaries, but the first English study of the poor little Koreans began at this time. Okay, so now the dark period, right? From the Japanese colonial period. From 1910 to 1945, Korea was ruled by Japan. So, uh, this is something that I obviously knew happened, but I didn't know too much exactly about exactly how this happened and what happened during the Japanese uh, occupation. Our book doesn't discuss much about what life was like for Christians during this period, so I was forced to find the information elsewhere. All our book says is that it was difficult to be Christian during this time. So, this is a long time, right? 35 years. So, I wanted a little more information. I wanted to know what was happening during this time if you were a Christian. Um, so, I read a short paper. It was maybe like 30 pages. Like I just kept reading and reading, but still I couldn't really find too much good information, but I'll just let you know a little bit. So even after reading several papers on this topic, I was not able to find a lot of information on the subject of Christianity during the Japanese colonial period. But the main idea I got was this. In general, the Japanese did not like Christians, and they tried to limit their power and their influence. The Japanese were Buddhists, and from what I read, Buddhists actually increased in power during the Japanese colonial period. So Buddhism saw kind of a rise while Christianity declined. Um, But here's the thing: pretty much all of the churches and the missionary schools were established and ran by Americans. All right, so there were a lot of Americans, not a lot, maybe 40 or 50 or 100. There are thousands and thousands now, but at that time there were not too many. But let's say hundreds. There were hundreds of Americans who were running the churches and spreading Christianity in Korea at that time. Uh, from what I read in that paper, it seems that the Japanese were worried about totally abolishing Christianity out of fear. So, to totally get rid of Christianity, they would have had to kick out all the Americans. They would have had to maybe kill some of the American missionaries there. And I think they were maybe scared of starting a war. I could be totally wrong about that, but from what I read in the book, that's what I saw. That the Japanese were scared of America, so that's why they didn't get rid of Christianity. But I think they could have easily wiped out Christianity in Korea if they wanted to, but they didn't. So I don't know. I'd love to read more about it, and if anybody knows more about what happened, send me a message. I'd love to learn more about it. Okay, so the most influential person in KMU's founding was the son of James. The son of James, okay? James's son was Edward, okay? Oh, it was right here. The son of Edward, no, the son of James was Edward. He was born in the U.S., but he moved to Korea as a baby. So he was only like 2 months old, and his dad took him to Korea. He grew up in Korea, and he lived there for 42 years. And we're going to continue this in the next video. So we're going to see what, in the next video, we only have about 10 minutes left. We're going to learn more about what Edward Adams did. We're going to learn about the establishment of KMU University. You'll see that the book skips like way ahead until after the Japanese occupation. I'd love to know more about that time, because I really feel like the book just skips like 30 years and doesn't really tell us what's happening at that time. I'm really curious about what was going on. But anyway, we're going to learn about what happened after the Japanese occupation, and then we'll see. We're going to find that Edward, he started KMU University. He was the president, and he was running everything. But after Park Chung-hee became the leader of Korea, he made a new law that said that foreigners cannot be the president of any university. So all of these foreigners were basically reduced in power. So that was probably really sad for Edward, but we'll see what happens to him later. Okay, so let me introduce the assignment for this week. The assignment is a writing assignment, and it's called exposition writing. So what is exposition writing? It's a writing exercise that pushes you to use your imagination while writing. So exposition writing is usually, you might see this on a writing test. It's a common question on writing tests. They're asking you to imagine. So it might be, imagine that you were King Sejong and you were trying to make people think that Hangul was a great thing to use. So what would you say to the people to change their mind to use Hangul, right? So obviously you don't know exactly what he would say, but you kind of use your imagination and then you write about what you're going to say. I'll tell you the topic in the next slide. Here are 3 keys though that I want you to follow as you do this. So first, I want you to try to write it in English. Please don't translate it. So translation software is getting to be pretty good, like Papago and things like that. But if you write it in Korean and just translate it, it's not helping you in any way. It's not improving your writing skill. And the reason I want you to do this is because in the future you might take a writing test. You might take a IELTS exam that has writing. You might take a TOEIC writing class. The point is, you need that skill. So you need some practice. That's basically what I want you to do. I want you to just have some practice writing in English, testing your skills, and just even though it's uncomfortable, just trying to write. Okay. So please, if I think that you use the translator, because like I said, the translators are getting good, so they're usually the English is not bad. But sometimes I can read it and I can see that the translators make similar mistakes and do kind of strange things. If I see that in your essay, and I feel that you translated it, I'm just going to not give you any. I'll ask you. I'm going to tell you to do it again. Is what I'll do. So you can try to argue with me or whatever, but if I feel like yours looks like a translated thing, I'm going to ask you to do it again. So just please don't do that. Number two, this is a do or not do assignment. Like you're not going to get a grade on it. You're just going to you'll get like 5 points if you do it and 0 if you don't do it. So just do it. Don't worry about your grammar or anything like that. Just the main point of this is not to test your skill, it's just to give you practice. That's why I'm making you do this. Again, it's not about testing your skill, it's about giving you practice. So don't worry too much. The last thing is you should write 250 words. That may sound like a lot, but it's really not. It's a very common length of questions on a writing exam. Okay, so you're kind of maybe starting to see that the reason I'm making you do this is because in the future, if you take a writing test, I wanna give you something that might make you prepared. Okay, so that's really why we're doing this. Okay, so let's finally look at the topic. Here's the topic. And this, remember, this is, you gotta imagine. This is all about imagination. Imagine that you were one of the first missionaries to travel to Korea. Here's what you should write about. How you might feel as one of the missionaries. What surprising things you might see. What things you might do to make your life more comfortable. Okay, so this is what I mainly want you to focus on. How you might feel, what surprising things you might see, and what things you might do to make your life more comfortable. Okay, so obviously we don't know exactly what it was like to be a missionary, a Christian missionary from America, right? Who knows what they were thinking? But that's what this is. This is imagination, right? You use your imagination, you try to think what they might have felt. As a Korean person, you might be able to do number 2 a little more easily. Basically, what might they be surprised by? You might be able to answer this a little better. And then number 3, what might you do to make your life more comfortable at there? That you can give your own opinion because you're a modern person and this was the very uncomfortable time. So what would you do to make your life more comfortable? And number 4, if you're really, really, really having trouble getting to 250 words, write about anything new that you learned in the video. So if you learned something new, if you want to tell me about the Jaejungwon drama, if you know about that, you can tell me about that. So like try to do this first and then you can do like space and then start the new one if you really have trouble getting to 250 words. One more thing I want to show you. So how do you know that you're doing 250 words? Okay, let's look at this. I hope this works. Most Word programs, including Hancom Office, have something called it works really well in Microsoft Word. But like if you kind of highlight all your text and you drag it down, you can see here how many words you have in your essay, which is really helpful. So what I wrote here has 601 words. Okay? So let's check it out. How much is 250 words? Just so we can kind of see what it looks like. So how much is this? Huh? 600? No way. Really? Okay. See, 600 is a lot. Come on, shut up. Leave me alone. What the hell? Doesn't work. Okay, well, this software is out of date, so I can't use it. But anyway, 250 words is not that much. You can easily do it. So, thank you guys for watching the video. Um, I hope it was not too boring for you. And good luck on your writing assignment. And I will see you in the next video next week. Have a good weekend. Have a good week.